Lindsay.
Chairperson Philip Goldstein.
Here.
Vice Chairperson Marty Jost. Commissioner Tom Wood. Commissioner Wendy Newland. Here. Alternate Commissioner Michael Lowry. Alternate Commissioner Renzo Bianchi.
Here. Thank you. Amendments to the agenda. The only one I have, as you see on the this latest copy, the Ladera storage site plan item is continued to a later meeting. Staff, do we have any idea when that will come back? April 4th, April 1st?
April 1st is
April
what
1st.
we're planning. Yes.
Okay, April Fool's Day. That's, is there something very appropriate about that, perhaps? All right, administrative determination of alternate voting. Both Michael and Renzo will obviously vote tonight with the absence of two of the regular commissioners. Public comment. This is an opportunity for anybody who wishes to speak on anything that is not on the agenda. Our two remaining business items both will offer an opportunity for public comment, but if anybody wishes to speak on anything not on the agenda, no? All right, hearing none. Lindsay?
No one has signed up to speak.
All right, presumably. All right, so we will close the open public comment. The consent agenda consists only of approval of the February 18th, 2025 meeting minutes. First, let me ask commissioners, any additions or corrections to the minutes? Staff, any additions or corrections to the minutes? Hearing none. Attorney, our pinch hitting attorney, anybody, any additions or corrections? All right, the minutes pending a motion on the consent agenda. Do I hear a motion on the consent agenda, which consists only of the minutes of the February 18th, 2025 meeting? Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Second? Second. Moved and seconded. All in favor of approval of the consent agenda, say aye. Aye. Motion carries on a 4-0 vote. Okay. I can go ahead and sign the. All right. As I mentioned, the Ladera storage site plan is continued presumably to the April 1st meeting. So now we move on to item number 7, which there will be public hearings on each one. First one is land use code amendment on outdoor lighting. And I believe that's you, Jay.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. All right, yeah, so we'll have our first proposed code amendment is on outdoor lighting. And the town's existing lighting standards address placement of outdoor lighting, but lack a comprehensive approach to minimizing light pollution, energy waste, and glare. And the goal of this code update is to modernize the town's outdoor lighting regulations to comply with dark sky standards while ensuring public safety, functionality of commercial and residential outdoor lighting systems, and improving visual comfort. After reviewing research on energy use and the effects of light pollution on the ecosystem as well as animal and human health, staff determined a modernization of the town's code would be appropriate. In our research, we compared the county and our closest neighbor, Fort Collins. We also looked at Dark Sky, Colorado. They have a model code. Just looked at how they are doing things. We found that Larimer County has the most up-to-date, and ours would be similar to what the county has in existence, so it would jive well. So what specifically is changing? So the town's lighting code is essentially embedded in the table titled Site Lighting and Building Illumination, Table 5.3.3, not to be confused with Section 5.3.3 Side Yards. Staff have integrated the new code language into the structure of the table so it would flow as our code is written. The code updates aim to strike a balance between ensuring the town is well lit and safe while reducing light pollution. Why does this matter? Recent studies indicate light pollution can negatively affect human health, specifically one's circadian rhythm. And artificial light pollution also negatively affects migratory birds and life cycles and movements of insects, small mammals, birds, and reptiles. Staff identify the importance of preserving views of astronomical features such as stars, planets, and satellites for residents and visitors to our community. So less light pollution, more night sky visibility. So the old rules did not do enough to prevent light from spilling into the skyway or onto neighbors' properties. The new proposed plan, all outdoor lights would have to be fully shielded with a few exceptions to reduce glare and sky glow. This means clearer views of stars and less disruption to neighbors. Smart lighting for safety without wasting energy. The current code, some businesses and homeowners would leave bright lights on at night, leading to glare and wasted energy. The new code would require motion sensors for security lights and automatic dimming for parking lights and businesses after hours. Better protections for wildlife and human health. So before looking at this, bright unshielded lighting disrupted natural sleep cycles and made it harder for birds and other wildlife to navigate. With the proposed code, we would limit blue light or cool lighting. So it would be like the higher Kelvin lighting, and require warmer lighting, 2,700 to 3,000 Kelvin, which is easier on the eyes and safer for migrating birds. Clearer rules for holiday and decorative lighting. So currently, our code is really vague when it comes to holiday lighting. So the code would kind of define a season for allowing holiday lighting, and this would prevent excess brightness from blue, white LED holiday lights affecting the night sky. And some of this, it would more be to have it in place and enforced if there was a complaint, but it's not something that would be actively, if somebody has holiday lights up, in March or something, unless it was complained, we received a complaint, then probably wouldn't do much, but it would be having that in the code language. So in part of our analysis process, we held a public feedback session on March 5th. And these are the following areas that were discussed and suggested from the public. So having an amortization calendar or some sort of a schedule for replacing lights that are in disrepair or going out of service with a warmer, more compliant light system. Also making sure that the new code would account for migratory bird considerations, given the sheer number and different species. And it is definitely something this community is really, something that we love about our community. We wanted to make sure that that was considered. And then just refining the seasonal lighting, just having a clear definition of what that is and what those restrictions would be. And then what we had proposed had language for agricultural equipment lighting, and it was determined that it just isn't really necessary, given that the town has very little ag zoned land. So with that, staff would recommend approval, and I'm ready to answer any questions you may have.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks, Phil. I'm John. I'm John Garvey. I'm the chair of Dark Sky Colorado, and a lot of the time I spend my time doing like public education on the harmful effects of light pollution and advocating for dark sky conservation. And so I mean, so mainly I'm here. I thought it would be remiss of me not to just note that everyone on the town staff and the town council and the planning commission that I've interacted with has been super courteous and responsive. And it's really obvious to me that you take public input seriously. So I'm really grateful to all of you. And on the whole, I'm really delighted by this. And you've obviously put an exceptional amount of thought and work into it. And you did a better job than I certainly could have done. So anyway, really grateful about that. This is a economic win, a public health win, a quality of life win, an ecological win, and even a public safety win. So you might, and my only comments were, this is a little low. I noted a couple of things that were passed along from my colleague, Aaron Watson, who's the head of the Dark Sky Mentor Program, Dark Sky Compliance Guy. But I just think you might have already amended this. I felt like the exemption for the public right-of-way could nullify a lot of the other things in this code, just because that is probably the majority of our outdoor lighting. And then I think the 90-degree cutoff noted on like the third row of the lighting ordinance also kind of contradicts some of the other provisions in there about light trespass. But those are my main things that I was concerned about. And then again, I just want to reiterate that like I'm really pleased with this and grateful to you. And yeah, this is going to be a quality of life win for everyone who lives in Timnath for decades to come. And the last draft that I have access to of the code gets us like 90 or 95% of the way there. So that's all.
Great, John. Thank you.
I got a question.
Yeah,
for him,
and well,
please.
hang on a second. I'm gonna, now let's, go ahead and sit down and we
No, I
may,
got a
may have
question
you.
for him.
Okay, go ahead, but
All right.
I wanted to have your introduction
Oh,
first.
sure.
Okay, so I'd like to do that
Okay,
first.
that's fine.
And then we'll circle back to John
Okay,
if necessary,
all right,
if you
that's
don't
fine.
mind.
Yeah, that's
Okay,
fine.
so Renzo volunteered to, under our plan here to have different commissioners lead off discussions on land use code amendments, volunteered graciously to start off with lighting. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Renzo, and why don't you lead
Okay.
off, and then the other commissioners will chime in. And if need be, we'll bring John back up. John, you can go ahead.
Yeah, I'd have a seat.
Go ahead.
All right.
Let him. Yep.
So thanks, Phil. First of all, I can definitely tell you guys put a lot into this, a lot of, really appreciate it. It looked really well in there. So I've got a series of things that I'm just going to go through, and then the last part that I'll discuss is the actual individual items within the code update.
Why don't you talk, I'm sorry, talk on mic if you, as much as possible for all
Okay.
the
Can you hear me?
thousands of people out there and who are interested in this presentation.
That's so funny. I've never been told that my voice isn't loud enough. The first thing is what I did is I tried to do a search similar to what you did, what the other counties did, what the state did. And then I went and looked at our master plan. because I wanted to make sure that we were consistent in our master plan. And part of the reason why I went to the master plan is you introduced a brand new concept here, and it's called dark sky. And when I read the master plan, I don't find anything in the master plan with regards to dark sky. Specifically, when it talks about lighting, it states specifically, fewer public street lights, street networks, and sidewalks offer the preservation of the development of rural neighborhoods. So meaning that it's not the lighting that's necessarily the issue. It is the number of lights and the amount of lighting. So what drove staff to recommending the dark sky, and will the master plan be updated to include the dark sky as an objective?
Well, so the dark skies, kind of the model standard, internationally even. So going that route and looking at how they're doing things, that's kind of the boilerplate. That's where you would start. As far as updating the master plan, I'm not aware of any plan to do that. I don't know that it would be necessary, just to start implementing dark sky principles in our code, to include that in the master plan at this time.
Okay, so Phil, I know eventually we're going to be doing updates to the master plan,
Talk about the comprehensive.
or the comprehensive plan.
Comprehen-
I'm
yeah,
sorry,
I-
the comprehensive plan.
He
I'm
was on a
sorry.
roll. I didn't want to interrupt him.
No, sorry, I
was-
called it in my notes master plan. I meant comprehensive plan.
Okay, that
Sorry.
makes more sense. I was like, yeah, okay.
Yeah, no, there's no such thing, or at least that I know.
And yes,
No.
we planning commission will be involved in the
Yeah.
comprehensive plan.
It's just, I strongly urge us to update it because everything that I research, and again, I know nothing about lighting until I started doing this work. So I'm by far a expert at all on this. Definitely a novice. But as I was doing the research, and I was really glad that you guys highlighted the Flagstaff study that they did that lended a lot of light, because that looks like you adopted a lot of stuff from them as well. But since dark sky is a new concept and it involves a lot of education and all that kind of stuff of the community, it would be best if we did consider putting it into the comprehensive plan.
So just going back to that, the comprehensive plan will be reviewed and updated. I believe like it's on the table to move forward in the next year or so. So I'm sure that there will be some aspect of this that would be incorporated into that.
Okay, sounds good.
I think as far as the comp plan, to having been through 2 amendments. So when you see how that process is, you will see further how things like this could, or in some cases couldn't, can or don't
Right,
fit into
Got
that
it.
process.
okay, no, thank you.
What else?
Oh, I've
Oh, yeah.
got several
you-
pages.
You got the floor, man.
Okay, so and this is just a side comment, if we do this, is, essentially what we did is we got rid of 5.33 and we rewrote it. And it was really difficult for me to look at the existing code, because obviously somebody wrote it with some intents. And like you said in your presentation, there were some things that are pertinent, still pertinent, and some that may not be pertinent any longer. And so I had a little difficulty, finding that traceability. But after a while, I went through that and was able to decipher that. But if we do that in the future, if you would please show some of the areas that you completely decided to get rid of, and then we can eliminate some of that.
Yeah, typically we'll do a strike through of any language that we're eliminating, but because we are completely striking through the entire section for lighting, we just thought it would be easier to reference it in the code for you all, but that's a great comment.
Okay, so there were only 2 items that I found that I didn't feel that were addressed in the new one. And one was, there doesn't appear to be a restriction for interfaces with interference with vehicles. That was a specific code item. It was 5331 item C in the old code. So I asked that you just go back and look at that to see if that should be added or if it's already covered. And then the second one, you do have an item in there with regards to ballparks. And, but it's the hours of lighting. Whereas this one was, and I think it was also in the letter from the dark sky, dark sky individual, that also indicated that we ought to have a specific item in there for the ballparks or large areas like that of the type of lighting. Because some of that can get horrendous, right? We don't have that currently, but I do know that we've got, some places.
It is off. What'd you do? Okay, you were talking about lighting, which is electricity, which frankly disappointed. There
Oh,
you go.
thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. I hit a wrong button. Sorry. So if you would just look at those two, I think that's something that we ought to.
So we do have, under the control section, it has kind of the requirement of when lighting should be eliminated. And it's 30 minutes after business closure and then remain off until reopening. So that's actually stricter than what we currently have. And then in terms of ballparks and play fields, I think that's up for discussion. That's kind of a special use. So we do restrict it to say lighting needs to be eliminated at 11 p.m. But certainly we can put more controls around that if that's your guidance.
No, I think as far as what you have there for the hours is good. The part that's not in there, and you do a real good job of saying, like under the canopy, and I think the max is like 30,000. Again, I don't know enough about what kind of lighting you have in a ballpark, if it's more than 30,000 or whatever, especially if they have multiple ones. And so that's where the comment comes in at, is against that particular area.
Staff, is that clear? What,
That is clear.
Okay.
Yes, we can
Ren-
look into that.
Renzo, what?
Yeah.
Keep going.
Sorry, I'm trying to call up my sheet. I didn't have that up and I apologize. Let's see. So I did catch the very last item with regards that things will be done through attrition, essentially through normal maintenance. One of the things that you said in your presentation is disrepair. And I'm sorry, I didn't have those in my notes. I didn't see anything in there that addressed disrepair. Something with it talked about maintenance, unless that's where you're covering disrepair. But you specifically called out disrepair, meaning you must have had comments from at that community session that people saw things that were broken and not getting fixed. Should we consider putting something in there for specifically for disrepair in a time frame in which they should be repaired?
No, we didn't really have any comments specific to disrepair. It was more, it was just synonymous with maintenance. So
Maintenance.
as things come up that appear to be in disrepair or through general maintenance, just replacing those with more friendly devices.
Can I, and again, I don't want to take
Please.
you off your game
No, you're
plan,
not.
but things occurred to me. I did hear, Jay, I heard you mention at the open forum that the Public Works Department was doing an audit of sorts of the various types of equipment for the purpose of this amortization term you use for when things need to be replaced, they then would be brought up to code. That's correct, right? They are doing some kind of survey. I thought you used expression audit, survey, whatever.
I'll let Justin chime in on this as well, but they did have someone look at their lighting fixtures just in terms of Kelvin. And like, I think they're The ones that have been installed to date, 500 plus fixtures are 4,000 Kelvin plus. And so they're going to be looking at new ones coming online, lowering the Kelvin. Is that correct?
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for the question. So there is a little bit of division between the land use code and what's called like the Timnath criteria manual. We want to make sure those line up. So like the Timnath criteria manual is more set for streets and stuff like that. So we do want to look at that. We want to wait until the land uses code is amended. And then also when we get some staff, we're still trying to hire a senior civil engineer with development review. So we do want to look at those standards. We are working with a lighting consultant on a feasibility study. Because as you know, the town does not own all the new, there's new lights and they don't own all the lights. So some of the new subdivisions, they become town lights. So we do want to look at that. And actually, we're going to council next week for a budget request on converting LED lights downtown. And what we want to do is do some samples to check out the different levels, just to make sure for safety, what the different levels of illumination are. And we could go downtown and see what the differences are between the different Kelvins and make sure they still provide for safety also. That's the one thing we want to look at. But we are investigating that as we're working on it. Again, we're at the very, very, very preliminary stages at this point, but we would like to, find out what the planning commissions and the land use code is, and we would probably want to match that. So I don't know if that answers your questions, but we're at the very early stages of looking into that.
It does, and I'm remiss. I just wanted more so for your further questions.
You're a
Could
great
be-
straight man, because that's where my next questions were going.
That's
So
one of
that's
the
great.
nicest things everybody ever said to me. By the way, we have requested from the staff the kind of summary that would present this information in a way that would public comment. What is the standard? What's public comment? What are we moving towards? The kind of thing that would facilitate the kind of information you were getting at, if that makes any
Okay,
sense.
no, that
So,
makes sense.
okay, go back
So-
on your game.
Our street lights that we have in place now, are they shielded or unshielded? The black ones, the really nice looking ones. Because I see a big bulb that hangs under, but then I see a clandescent thing that's all the way up under the round piece. So what are those considered?
Yeah, I would defer to probably the consultant. That's probably above my education experience. Mine's more in the street design, but maybe the planners could help out on that. But I know they are more for, down, the lighting is forced down. I know our standards do require, I think, either some cutoff, either a full cutoff or semi cutoff, but I guess maybe Logan would know.
Yeah, they don't always need to be fully shielded if they have like lens options that direct it down.
Okay,
So I think any fixture that is installed should meet that standard.
okay. And I didn't have that. I just thinking about it while I did my walk today. I think you answered the question about what's percentage of streetlights that really need to be upgraded, and you said that that's something being worked. Based on what we know today, can the existing lights that we have without a complete overhaul be modified for what we're discussing here? And you mentioned that you're looking at using the LEDs downtown, but I think those are all Excel Energy lights versus Timnath lights, if I recall right.
Yeah, the ones downtown, like on Main Street, are
Yeah.
our lights, so we could
Oh,
go
they
ahead
are.
and convert those.
Are they all easily convertible without
Yeah, again, that's
major
what my
modifications?
that's my understanding talking to our staff is they can be, converted pretty easily.
Okay, I just don't want to see us
Yeah.
incur a huge bill because we want to go different wattage, and it's going to make more sense when I ask my next question.
Yeah, and that's another reason we want to look into that.
Okay. And then once you do that, you'll also recognize what an overall cost savings, if any, is from all this, I assume?
Yes, we're already in the process of investigating that right now. Not only for the town lights, converting them that aren't LED, but converting those into LED. And then also if we were to take over like other, like XL and also the think it's Poudre Valley REA lights. We would look at, we're doing a feasibility analysis right now to look at that potential. We
Okay.
would look at the cost conversion would be part of that cost estimate.
So whenever I've looked at lights to buy, I've always looked at lumens. You know, I want to know how much it illuminates. I want to know how much it comes down footprint. And I guess those are called foot candles, which I never really realized before until I learned with here. But then the Kelvin has to deal with the color and the warmth of the lights. At the 5,000, and this is another thing that I was a little confused on your presentation where you said you wanted to get rid of blue lights, whereas the higher Kelvin, at least based on my research, is the bluer light, and the lower wattage is a yellow light. So I'm assuming we want to go to the yellow lights because we're going shorter. My concern there, and I'd like to understand your rationale there, is the higher wattage, based on my understanding, is a cooler light, whereas the other is a warmer light. Are we going to be, and I know this is a drastic stretch, but are we going to be warming up the community as a result of bringing in these lights? And I know we're concerned about the wildlife and all that other stuff.
It's just color temperature, so it's not like ambient temperature. So it would just be lowering, making it more yellow.
Got it.
I'm sure you've heard with like a screen, yeah, I think even Apple implemented a while back in one of their versions, more of a warm light in the evening because of
Yeah.
how that affects your body. So the idea here is just to have a more of a yellow light instead of a blue light. Blue's just harsher.
Got it. Okay, sounds good. I think it's great also that you guys are recommending LED and going away from the other. One of the things that I know you stated multiple times about public safety, but there's more to it than just the environmental and the health of the animals and that. My public safety is more, I want to be able to see. I'm getting old. You know, I don't wear glasses still, knock on wood, but I want to make sure I can see at night. And I saw how you did your foot candle in that. With that lower Kelvin, and I saw in the lumens that you brought in, will we have similar lighting that we have today on the street lights? Or will it be less or more?
I think the idea is just to be smarter with how we're moving forward with this. But yeah, it's going to be similar. It's just going to, we're just kind of fine tuning some of those components. But you will, one of the main principles of a lighting plan is to ensure that public safety, that at night you can see if you're walking in a neighborhood that you feel safe, that you can see your surroundings and that sort of thing. So that's still the most important aspect of any lighting plan, including this update.
Yeah, this controls more how the light is used. So things will still be visible and safe at night, but it's preventing glare and upglow and light pollution. So that's really the intent.
And I saw later on when you get into the X code, which I'm about ready to get into, you did increase the foot candle footprint from what it previously was. So that to me implied that it was also going to be a little bit brighter, but I wanted to make sure. So that's my general comments. Now I've got it
Okay.
on the.
You wanted, there was something, you
Oh.
wanted Mr. Garvey to come back up. John, would you come up, mind if you still do want to do that? right?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, let's take this
Also,
opportunity.
like one note on the Kelvin and the public safety, like that's super important, obviously. I think that my understanding at least is that, so like those higher Kelvin, like short wavelength lights have more of a detrimental impact on your night vision. So another thing is like you walk past that well-lit area and you're less able to see compared to as if you,
Yeah.
depending on, the quality of the lighting in the area. So And I don't think it has any impact on foot candles. I wouldn't know that for sure, but I think that like it's gonna have the same result in like lumens or foot candles. But anyway, go ahead if
You,
have any-
you made a comment and I didn't quite understand it. And if you could repeat it. And it was your last comment that you made with regards to trespass. I understood the public right-of-way comment. What was the other comment that you asked staff to consider?
They mentioned having like a required minimum 90-degree cutoff on the light fixtures. And my point is that a 90-degree, unless it's in like a depressed area, a 90-degree light, it's gonna, that horizontal light is just inherently gonna cause light trespass almost anywhere you put it. So,
So what were you recommending?
so basically, I don't have, Aaron had a more specific recommendation like this. I don't remember his exact wording, but it was like 75 or 80 degrees.
Okay.
It's more about like, so a light fixture can actually have a 90-degree cutoff and be pretty good in terms of like downlight. I mean, it's not very common. It depends on the kind of like diode or whatever, but another thing is like if the bulb goes beneath the cutoff, then even if it's like marketed as and the industry probably does this sometimes, like market it as full cutoff or whatever, but the light from that bulb is gonna produce some degree of uplight too.
Got it. All right, thank you.
Renzo, thank you, John.
You're welcome.
I appreciate you, but I appreciate you coming tonight. This
Oh yeah,
meant a lot.
well, thank you. And again, glad to be here.
Very good. It's nice when people come to offer public comment here at our meetings.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Bill.
Thank you.
Oh, and I also, to what you mentioned about the sports and the stadium lighting, I'm really interested in, I would be really interested to see like a side-by-side quote for dark skies standard stadium lighting versus conventional stadium lighting. There might already be examples of that out there. I haven't looked it up. I haven't like found any, but I'd be really interested in seeing that. It might result in upfront savings. They might be significant, but you know, I can't say that for sure. So, but it can be done and I'm pretty sure it can be done economically, but regardless of whether we're gonna make like dark sky quality stadium lighting, I think that the exemption, if we're gonna have an exemption, should probably have a couple more caveats about shielding and intensity.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Sure.
Renzo, anything else general
No.
comment wise?
Uh,
Okay.
Not on that end.
All right. We may, I don't know if other commissioners may have a question for you, but right now we're going to bring it up here and commissioners will have other questions
All right.
for the staff. Thank you, John.
All right. Thanks a lot. Thanks, Bill.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to have one circle back to one thing about agricultural lighting, but let me ask my colleagues, first of all, their thoughts on this particular land use code. And I meant to, at the beginning of this, I meant to echo the very, very wise statement that our Commissioner Jost made at our last meeting where he said, let's not let perfect get in the way of better. And so the message is not lost on me that this is not a 100% process. We continue to evolve. Land use code, first and foremost, is a living document. And so, and it's certainly within our purview to, at a later meeting, whether it's on the agenda or not, to bring something back up again. But I thought Commissioner Jost's comment was very pertinent here. And I think some of that applies certainly when we heard somebody who's affiliated with an organization for whom this is near and dear in I believe, an altruistic manner, saying we're 95% of the way there. So, all right, commissioners, I hope I didn't steal anybody's thunder. Wendy, let me look to you first.
No, I don't. Speaker Greg. No questions other than I did want to ask something about agriculture, but I'll wait and see if you come up with my question. I'm just thrilled that you're putting something in there about seasonal lighting. That's my general comment on it.
Michael,
That's my concern as well as the seasonal lighting and some of the, how's that going to impact with people mounting permanent seasonal lighting that are, finding holidays just to play different lights that exist on calendars? How would that be addressed? Those permanent mounted ones where they have different lights playing and music according.
somebody want to answer that? No, John, I'm
Is my
sorry,
point- Is
we've
that,
closed the public comment.
do you
Jake,
understand where I'm going? with that?
Staff,
I'll try taking a stab at it. It's more geared towards the harsh blue light that
Okay.
you see, so it'd be things like lighting every tree in your yard and the bushes. I think a lot of, I think they call them, I don't know if it's a brand name, but the jellyfish lighting that they have mounted.
Yes.
If it's done tastefully, it's directed down, that would be different. I think we would probably need to look at how we would differentiate that with language. But yeah, I don't see that as coming into play. And again, it would be more of a enforcement tool if there's, if you have something that's kind of obnoxious or outside of a community norm, however that would be defined, I guess. That's kind of what we would be looking to be able to have some methodology to enforce, because that's the hardest part with something like this, is how do you enforce it? But if it's done tastefully, it's kind of a different situation.
this, Michael, to your point, Wendy bringing it up initially, it seems to be a bah humbug kind of, I'm trying to envision code enforcement knocking on somebody's door
Yes.
when their lighting has come on for starting in Halloween, their holiday lighting. I'm not seeing, I think the intent is good. I'd like to see it. I echo, I think it's being abused right now, but I'm not seeing it necessarily being enforced.
A government solution would be hard, I imagine.
Yeah,
So-
like in my neighborhood, the Metro District does enforce it. I'm assuming that in some of the other metro districts, they're doing that too. If they see lighting out, they'll come out and do what you said.
Yes, and
It's
there is, this would be something I presume to be reported to code enforcement, and you
Yeah.
can do that through the website. There's a pretty handy link, I'm told, where you report it. I think, I'm not even sure you have to give your name if you're worried about repercussions from your obsessive lighting neighbors.
And then what happens? They get a letter from the town?
I don't know if this is not one of those, by the way, that I'm talking about somebody, I haven't gotten any letters, so I don't know. I don't know what happens.
Test it.
I just know it's on there. So, Michael,
No, those are,
okay.
I've got
Go-
a few,
yeah,
I've
by all
got several
means.
more. Okay, sorry. And this is in the specific sections now. Again, great job. If you can, the boxes aren't lettered or numbered like the old one was, so if you could do that. So I made up numbers, counting at the top. I'm in section 5331, design standards. Box number 2, it just needs to have where that applies. Right now, they're not filled in. Take a look at that. Item 5, it talks about unshielded lighting, and it talks about 1,200 lumens and motion sensors. I applaud you for putting in motion sensors. I think that's very important for security. However, 1,200 lumens is too small in some cases. For example, if you have a ring floodlight, which I know a lot of people in Timnath have, those are 2,000 lumens. So I think that needs to be amended. Otherwise, people are going to be storming us and saying, I'm not replacing my lights, or are you going to pay for replacing my lights? Because it was valid, or you're gonna grandfather them in and it'll defeat the purpose. So I think we ought to, if we want to say for normal floodlights or for something, we'll try to get it at that, but I think we ought to put in something for that level.
Staff, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, so in the technical criteria manual, basically anything above 1200 lumens needs to be fully shielded. So I think that's where that was taken from, just kind of keeping consistent with what we have, but we can look at that.
Okay.
Renzo, anything else, general comment before I have one? Scott?
I just want to rewind a little bit. I love to rewind. Enforcement, yes, we do have a website that people can file complaints. You do need to include your name. You can't be anonymous. Enforcement for lighting. So I think the scenario that Renzo's talking about, like a number of lumens, the things that typically enforcement will get into is light trespass. We will not have the ability to walk up to your Ring doorbell and look at the light bulb or the lumens in doing that. So just, this really gets more into when we're reviewing new projects and getting to that. The enforcement's mostly going to be looking at light pollution. So our one code enforcement officer is not going to be running around town looking and inspecting every light bulb or shielding or whatnot. It's really going to be looking at, especially the pre-existing situations, is light trespass is really the main tool we'll have for enforcement. Mostly because you have to have permission to get on somebody's property in order to do that. So that's a challenge that we would be facing with that. So I think in looking forward to new developments, when we review those projects, those are the standards that we'll be looking at, as the shielding and full cutoff and their lighting plans. So I just wanted to help shed some light on the world of enforcement. So
I just had two others.
No pun intended, I presume.
Again, you did a great job on those tables and laying them all out. Under the maximums, is canopies and outdoor roof lines covered someplace within that? Is that the other? I didn't see that. I mean, because, the businesses have a lot of the lighting up along their roof lines that travel the entire building. And that, do we need to cite something in that under the lighting levels and site trespass? Again, just something to look at. Go ahead. Sorry.
So we do have a provision earlier on in the table about canopies, but are you asking, can we also include it where the lumens and foot candles are with like building and trees and walkways?
Yes. So for example, under 2 and 3, you specify the maximum in foot candles and you specify the maximum in lumens, and you call out building entryways and parking areas and loading areas and so forth. And then you talk about common open space and outdoor storage, but I didn't see anything. And you're right, up above, you talk about the canopies and roof lines. But down here, we don't specify what level of lighting should be in those particular areas. And I'm not saying we have to, I'm just saying, is it something that we should consider adding?
Yeah, most codes don't have it nestled under the max lumens and foot candles as well. Like it's kind of taken care of, I think, in the language above. But we could look at it if.
Okay. And then my last one, again, I never knew that that's what they were called, the bollard lighting, which apparently are those little lights that can highlight pathways and driveways and all that. And we're saying that they're maximum, I think, 47 inches, I believe. 32 to 47 inches, which makes sense in, like a commercial area. Does that make sense in a residential area?
I think with residential, we're contemplating more multifamily developments where you have pathways and common open space areas, dog parks. So bollards are usually features in those types of developments.
Thank you. That's it.
Great job.
Thank you.
You prefaced your remarks by saying you're not an expert. You
I'm
could have
not.
fooled me.
You are now.
He is now. I thought he did a great job. I have to rethink ceasing this plan of mine. Renzo seems to relish rise to the challenge. Appreciate it.
Thanks.
My only comment, is regarding agricultural lighting. What can you call up? You mentioned you removed from the draft on the agricultural equipment lighting, removed from the draft. Can you call up what was in there that you removed, please?
So there was a line that just specifically, well, actually not very specifically called out agricultural lighting as exempt. But it didn't, really give detail as to what that would include. Assumption would be things like, some of these irrigation systems, the sprinkler systems that have sometimes like a really bright blue light or something that flashes on it, be things like that. But again, because the research that we found and what we had included was so vague, and the amount of agriculture zoned property or zone district land in Timnath, it just didn't really make sense to even have it in there.
Yeah, I'll tell you, I've been, I've been here 15 years now in Timnath. And so I was here, there were 623 people. And some of you know, became close with some of the old town residents in particular. This was and this may seem much ado about nothing, but I think it's, if you'll hear me out, please. This was an agricultural community before, as some of them referred to, we pilgrims came to town. And so I think I realize that per se, we don't have a lot of agriculture within the town limits. We do have some that borders them. We have other agriculture areas that will end up being housing developments, commercial developments. But I think to honor at least, we talked about an agricultural, a country feel, a rural feel in our comprehensive plan. So I think we should leave something in there. That does not mean that it should be obtrusive, odious, whatever. But I believe we should do that. If nothing else, I think to take it out of there, to me, is synonymous with somewhat, along with other things that have already transpired, let alone all the building, which was inevitable, to ignore Timnath's history as an agricultural community. And that was what this was known for. So commissioners, other thoughts on this? Because I am kind of on the horse here to keep something in there.
Yeah. No, I agree. And I'm glad you asked because, well, first of all, agricultural equipment, but combine, I'm from Kansas, but I don't know a lot about agricultural equipment. Is that what we're talking about? The combines and the water sprinklers and things like that?
Yeah, I envisioned more like the large sprinklers. You'll see them up here a couple miles east of us in some of the fields, some of those sprinkler systems. I don't know that a combine, I mean, that would be like light shed off of a vehicle, basically. So I don't know if that would technically meet
I see 'em at
what
night.
this was driving at, but.
Okay. I too think we should put something back in just to honor them. And here's why I think that, because in our comprehensive plan, so there were, in February 2020, there were 16 one-on-one interviews, 4 online questionnaires that went out, 8 steering committee meetings, 4 planning commission and town council work sessions. The number 2 thing that came out of it, what would you improve about the town of Timnath in the future? Preserve open ag lands. The number 5th thing that came out, what do you love about the town of Timnath? Its rural character. So I just feel like we should honor our ag people put something back in.
Renzo, this
No,
was your baby.
I agree. I think it's necessary. And by the way, I'm in Trailside, and right across from the fire station, there's a huge field there that they plow, that they do their haying at, and they have water sprinklers right there in the middle of town. So I still think we have an ag presence, and we ought to address it.
Michael?
I think just for the history, it's appropriate.
So
It may never come up, but
I believe, and there's a couple of ways we can come at this so that we don't prolong it tonight. And because you indicated there was some vagary, lack of clarity in this, one suggestion, and I'll turn to Sarah, our town attorney, acting town attorney here, and staff, is on the question, we, perhaps at our next meeting or the next meeting, which we have land use codes, rather than prolong it tonight, if you would come back and understanding the direction we want to go. If we need to make a motion to that effect, or when we do vote on this, we can add a condition. And I understand we'll want to be very clear about that, correct? Our condition is that you come back at a subsequent meeting. So Sarah, would that be
Yep.
acceptable?
You can do either. So you can make a motion to continue this on a specific date or a motion to approve with conditions. And staff might have some insight onto what is more efficient.
Yeah, so we're getting in that direction. I think, commissioners, if you see where I'm headed, because I'm guessing you can't specify what brings clarity to this. And may very well be, for instance, you mentioned, as I said, so that we aren't giving a blank check necessarily. I would say to come back in due course, perhaps the next meeting or the meeting after that, if there's land use code, with a recommendation on something that in your mind brings clarity and also, but keeps it in the code.
Can I make an alternative suggestion to you? if I
Certainly.
may? I like what you're saying. Definitely come back with putting in the ag. Staff has done a lot of good work here with making these updates. We're continuing to issue permits and stuff. What they have in place, I recommend that we approve what they have in place tonight so that it can get incorporated, with the idea of coming back with another amendment to it to put in exactly the ag stuff.
Thanks. I believe you're echoing.
Oh, is that what you were saying?
Yes, I'm
Okay.
echoing. We're going to vote on
Got it.
the
Okay.
land use code
Sorry
amendments.
for misunderstanding.
But there will be a condition, and I'm gonna, if absent of anybody else,
Condition.
approve it with a condition that we come back with clarification on that, but stays in the code. Does that sound, head nods, sounds, Sarah?
Yep, so just make sure the condition is, we have clear language.
Oh,
So
you-
if you want
you-
to specifically add a provision about ag, that's all we need to say.
You can count on
So-
that.
Perfect.
Okay, so count on it now. Now we need to craft that. Beyond that, I don't have any other comments. I think this is well done. I think we were, from what I heard at the open forum, we were well along on this anyway. I echo particularly Renzo's comments. To me, safety trumps everything else. I understand I understand dark sky philosophy, but first and foremost, I think most people want to be safe. And I think if that trumps the dark sky in some cases, but that should be selectively used. But I think we do a good job. I think streetlights for the most part are well maintained. And I echo the sentiment that as anything that's not in compliance, when it needs to be repaired, will be put into compliance. Justin, is that safe to say? That's the direction at least we're getting to.
Yeah, so right now, even though we do have the one standard, but we are, like I said, we want to relook at that. Most of the lights, like you said, the town has grown from 600 people. So the beauty is at least some of our lights are pretty new, so it's not like we're gonna have to go and fix a lot of lights. So I think we have time, but we do want to, upgrade our standards a little bit. But yeah, definitely anytime we have a light that goes out, we do need to repair it and fix it. Per the standard, like I said, if you look at our Tinmouth criteria manual, it's really pretty current as far as a lot of other places. So we don't maybe meet the 95% of the dark sky, but I think we're not as bad as maybe other communities. But again, there's room to grow. We're definitely looking at that. But for public works, safety is our big thing too, especially when we talk about streets, pedestrians, bicyclists, and vehicles. We want to make sure it's safe.
Thanks, Justin. Okay, first of all, before we craft a condition for this motion, staff, we at the outset of the meeting seemed to be some indication we would be meeting on April 1st, perhaps to consider the item that was pulled. Will there be any land use code amendment on there then? Okay, are there likely to be at the, what would be the 15th of April? Okay. Would it not be unreasonable to come back with some suggestions by April 15th on the agricultural lighting issue? Okay, so who wants to take a crack at crafting our condition stated very clearly?
I think I can do it.
Now you're
With
talking.
your help. I move to approve land use code amendment outdoor lighting with a condition to add a provision regarding agriculture. Okay.
Okay, hang on a second. We haven't asked for a motion yet. Oh, you did move.
Yeah, I moved, yeah.
Okay, all right, is there any question that what we are looking for, does that leave anything open to interpretation? Okay. Everybody's good with that? Okay, Renzo, that sound like a satisfactory, okay. It's been moved and seconded that we approve the land use code amendments with the provision that say it again.
With a condition to add a provision regarding agriculture.
Okay. I believe the only thing I'd add to that is subject to the approval when it comes before us of whatever that staff recommendation is. Sarah, set?
I think we would, if you want to add to exactly what Wendy just stated, we would just need to do a second motion.
She would need to, okay, let's back this up. We don't need to vote on okay, let's back this up. Could you add that to
Yes.
it? Thank you.
I move to approve land use code amendment outdoor lighting with the condition to add a provision regarding agriculture, subject to approval that comes before us
Very good. All right.
on April 15th.
Like to second that again?
I'll second that.
Okay, very good. Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, the motion with its condition carries on a 4-0 vote. Thank you. Our next item 7B, Land Use Code Amendment Residential Design Standards. This is, as you know, this is for discussion tonight. We will not, correct, staff will not be voting on this. Staff wanted us, and you'll hear in the presentation by Troy here in a minute. I understand what we're going to be hearing is things that they would like to get our opinion on. And then when do you think this one might come back to us for?
April 18th would be the target.
Okay.
Commissioners, I apologize. I have to step away. So you're in great hands tonight, but a very sick dog at home.
All right, we'll
I'm
count on that.
Late on his meds already, but I appreciate your feedback.
Thank you. All right. So Troy, you're up. Oh, and by the way, we'll get around to it.
There we go.
Commissioner Lowry has agreed generously after we hear the presentation and any public comment, he will have the floor to introduce this subject on behalf of the commission.
Great, thank you. Yes, this is my first time presenting to you guys. I've been on staff now for almost 2 months and look forward to presenting to you tonight and into the future. The design, detail, and block diversity are two parts of the table 5.3 in the land use code is more all encompassing than just those two issues. And we're going to get into that a little bit, but we're honing in on looking at both of those issues in the context of not changing some of the other parts of this table. And I think it's important to look at what parts are staying the same in the context of what parts we're considering changing. We want to get your feedback on how aggressive how we want to be on kind of tightening the screws on some of the rules or not. And because there's pros and cons of making the rules more stringent, and do we want to be more flexible with broader guidelines, or do we want to be more specific and prescriptive? And so I'm going to present what it would look like if we were more prescriptive, and then we're hoping to get some feedback from you. Is that too prescriptive, or does that sound about right? Yeah, and that goes back to, what must-haves should we consider versus do we want more flexibility? And let me get into some of the details. So there's four sections of this this part of Table 5.3 that are under the design standards. Or design standards is the whole Table 5.3. Pardon me. There's this section 5.3.4 that has form as one. I'm going to scroll through and then I'm going to come back to talk detail. So form is one of the sections. Materials is the other section. Design details the third. And block diversity is the fourth, right? So I want to talk about all four of those. Let me go back to form is one we're not proposing to change. But I wanted you to be aware that there are some regulations within there that are being covered already. And so that's why some of these code changes are going to be silent on some of these issues. We can come back to that, the details of that if that becomes part of the conversation. But there already is quite a bit, in particular, if you're looking at this, the non-residential buildings are pretty specifically, regulated in the form. The residential buildings within the, RE, RE1, RE2, and RE3 zones really only have very limited amount of regulation within the form. And so that's when we're going to get into some of the design, well, we'll get to that. Materials is also, we're not proposing any changes other than it refers to this term called architectural style that I think we want to add a definition to define a little more clearly what that means, but otherwise not changing the materials part of this code. So then in the third, like I said, the third section, design detail is one that we're talking about changing. And within that, currently, this is all it says about the design details, this A, B, and C. And so the A really is that walls can be seen from a public street and have been treated as a primary building facade. And so that's another term, facade and primary facade, that we think we really need to hone in on what does exactly that mean. So those are the second and the third definitions out of the three definitions that we want to add is what does that mean? So under this design detail, we're proposing to kind of add some more content. One would be to kind of hone in on the non-residential buildings, and one would be to hone in on residential buildings. And by the distinction between the two, I'm lumping in residential buildings with more than 6 units would be kind of lumped in with the commercial and the institutional and type of buildings. And then the residential would be sixplexes down through single family detached houses. And that would include, the townhomes up to 6 units. So within the commercial and apartments and the institutional and so forth, we're looking at, adding some specifics on arcades and windows and entrances and a certain amount of articulation that those types of buildings would need. In the previous version of the code, there was a provision that only pertained to retail buildings and that no other building types. We think commercial buildings, regardless of whether it's retail or office or institutional buildings as well, libraries or rec centers or whatever, would have this provision of 30% glass on the first floor. And then there's another part of our code language, if you kind of read through the detailed text that we're talking about on the second floor of these, primarily non-residential buildings, we'd want a certain minimum amount of articulation, architectural articulation on those upper floors as well. And then moving on to this section, honing in on the residential, six units or fewer, we're talking about regardless of the diversity, which we'll get to, this would be in certain instances that you have to have an enhanced building elevation. And so if you read through that code language, we're saying, well, when a building face is facing either a street, so that'd be the front street or a side street, if it's facing a park or a trail or an open space, that you would have to design the building to have 3 out of 6 choices on the list of the code language that we've got in there to enhance that elevation. We're also getting into the garage standards a little bit more. We had garage standards that were within the block diversity section that seemed more appropriate to put in this design detail section because regardless of whether you're across the street or next door to something, we wanted a certain amount of garage standards to apply across the board, regardless of diversity. So a few things that we're looking at in that code language would be the location of the garage on the site, the setback of the garage door. That stayed the same from the previous version. Previously, we had 50% of the building frontage could be a garage door, and we wanted to kind of tighten that down to 40%. And then we added some language in there about three-car garages and when that would be appropriate. And then when there's unique circumstances, we're adding like an alternate garage door treatments request that an applicant can make of the planning director to sort of make a call on the fly when it's kind of a unique circumstance. And then the kind of the last piece of this residential design detail is to add a little bit of language on roof articulation, and in particular that you can't have a street facing roof line that isn't broken up if it's longer than a certain distance. So you have a breaking up of that detailing. And then that brings to the fourth out of these sections of this code, or this section of table 5.3, the block diversity standards. And like I said, you can see the code over here on the right. The current code shows this whole big section of garage door stuff, which is what I was explaining. We're moving over to the design detail section. So really, what's currently in the block diversity standards, we wanted to kind of hone in on that and kind of add to it. And so one of the things we wanted to add was currently you can't have the same housing model directly across the street or directly next door to you. And we're also wanting to say, well, you probably can't and shouldn't have that same model on the same side of the street more than every 4 lots. And so we're adding that. We're adding a little more detail to what massing diversity means, and adding things such as the number of stories and the changes in roof lines, to get a little more clear on what massing diversity means. And then we're adding the ability to have fenestration such as windows and doors be part of the distinction of what the diversity is. And then we're also but we're requiring that in this draft anyway, that the paint color needs to be diverse, that you can't have the exact same color house right across the street from or right next door, or in the same instances where you need a different model variety. We did look at some other codes in the area to kind of give us some ideas as to what other places are doing. We looked at the Loveland Code, the Firestone Code, and Fort Collins Code. And there was quite a bit in the Firestone Code that seemed to have a lot of relevant comparables. So we sort of borrowed some of the code language, more of the code language from the Firestone Code than we did from either of the other two. And so really that's the presentation. We want to come back to you in a month after we hear your preferences on our, is this more regulation than you want, or does this sound about right, or somewhere in the middle? The question is, is it broke, or do we need to fix it, or and we just didn't want to propose that to go full bore unless you thought we should.
Very good. Before I turn it over, Commissioner Lowry, what is fenestration?
Fenestration is windows and doors. Yeah.
Okay.
It's basically the openings within a building.
There's a 50-cent word when
I was going to ask the same thing.
when nickel words to work. No offense. Tough one to work into a conversation.
Fenestration.
Certainly. Okay. With that, I'm turning over to Michael Lowry. Who's
Okay.
leading us off on this one. Oh, any public comment on Mr. Gross or otherwise? You do wish to offer public comment? Oh, you do? Okay, good. So please, 3 minutes. Name, address, please.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman, commissioners, town staff. I appreciate it. My name is Jim Gross, 6746 Stone Point Drive in Timnath here. Thank you for the opportunity of talking with y'all. I just want to be in very strong support of the town and what they're doing with this new facade kind of code in it. I think that the flexibility that the code, that is the way it's written right now, gives Timnath an opportunity to not be a sterile community, but a bright community that even though there are a lot of pilgrims still coming into the community, we'd sure like the community to grow and prosper. And I think that the variances that are included in this code or amendment is hitting what will make the homes, the buildings in this town very popular, very probably one that is important to me is that buildings would not look like boxes, which unfortunately some have in the community, and this is a good way of keeping it flexible, keeping it appropriate and endearing. So I think that there's a lot of things that could be done and a lot of things that need to be done. And I think the the way you've got it right now gives a lot of opportunity for people who want to develop their developments in a very nice way. The only question I had was on 53.4.4, which does include R3. And I actually didn't know that it wasn't including R4 because it looked like in the code amendment it was. That, how does that address the block details or the block density, diversity for condos and townhomes? I didn't get a clear understanding as to how that would work.
Yeah, block diversity, yeah, it's just by zone district, not by building type. Yeah, the way that the draft is written anyway, where the differentiation between the building type was just the design detail. So on this slide, you've got basically the residential 6 units or fewer as one scenario with enhanced architectural embellishment, and you've got the separate commercial and the multifamily and institutional as the other set. This is the way that the code currently reads, is the little table on the right, and then the draft language. I don't know if you saw in the packet. There's the actual draft code language. That is a good question, as how do we want to address that?
Great. Do you have other questions, Mr. Gross?
I just wanted to bring that
Okay.
forward and for your discussion.
All right. Anything
Yeah.
else you want to offer? And then we'll circle back to this.
No, sir.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Michael, if we let them answer that.
Yes,
And then we'll
yeah.
come to you. Okay. Staff, you want to?
I'm sorry, we were just trying to make sense
And I
of
know.
what we were just talking about.
And the get out of jail free cards you obviously have is, we're not deciding on it tonight. So if you want to include this when we come back with this later on, because I didn't entirely understand it either. So if that's acceptable, do you want to take a crack at it, or do you want to
Yeah,
hold it
and
for
I
when we come
believe
back?
I understand the question is the block diversity. You were saying, how does that apply to townhomes and things that aren't single family detached houses, or how does that apply to apartment buildings? And currently, it just applies to any building that's within these 4 or 5 residential zones. So we might want to take a closer look at that.
Yeah, a lot of codes have specific provisions for multifamily developments where like you can't have, like if you have several buildings in a development, it can't be monotonous. They can't all be the same. So the buildings have to be somewhat unique to each other, but still in harmony, I guess, with the same design aesthetic. So we can include something like that as well. That's a good,
Very,
yeah.
very good. Okay, now,
Okay.
Michael.
I appreciate a lot of the work and answered a lot of my questions with the presentation. I was curious about local cities and any impact that they had on the drafting of these policies. The 6 or more, they had answered that one. The other is, it truly is a philosophical discussion with how do we want to proceed moving forward. And obviously with Firestone, they're still developing, so the developers have bought into this and are moving forward with it. So I like that. The block diversity, I think, is very important. I think especially the paint. I live in a neighborhood where everybody pretty much chose the same paint. And I chose it first, so I'm frustrated. Has any developer offered any input on the philosophical approach on how they're going to deal with it? I think, yeah.
I'm
But-
I'm
'Cause
gonna,
we have to
I'm gonna
check
have a
for-
comment on that too, and
Yeah.
or a question too, so go ahead.
Yeah, no, I think,
We do have to check for compliance, as it is, as the code's currently written, whenever a building permit is pulled, we have to check for compliance with this when they submit for the building permit. And so when their development's approved in the first place, they have this, this matrix that is part of, the approval that, they submit to us the various, house model plans that they say are different enough from one another. And then there's a matrix that says which ones can't be next to each other or wherever the qualifier is. And so we have to check for that every time. And so we've had a lot of lively discussions with the developers about, about that as we, as these building permits come in. So we have a somewhat of an indication of what they think.
And I think you're right. It is a philosophical topic. And so I think, the fact that we anchored into Firestone is interesting because Firestone is also a rapidly growing community. So it's more similar to Timnath than say Loveland or Fort Collins. And they're implementing that code and seemingly doing a good job at it. So it seems like we're not reaching too far if we're kind of staying with where these newer communities are landing in terms of code provisions.
no,
Michael, other general comments?
no, I think that covers it. Again, very good presentation because you answered the questions I had as I was, considering this.
Good. All right, Wendy.
This is just a shout out to you, Logan, because you arranged that field trip that we took. And this makes so much more sense to me after seeing that. So thank you for arranging.
When we talk about diversity of product, diversity of design, to me, when I heard one of the public comment from the forum was that we're boring. I've never thought that. I personally, I think the diversity of product, I think the diversity of design. I'm not saying that we shouldn't fine tune this, and I commend you for fine tuning. It'd be very easy to stick with the status quo, but I happen to, when I go around Timnath, and I'm around quite frequently, I think particularly our diversity of product is very good. I also recognize when you talk about your circumstance notwithstanding, Michael, diversity of color, I realize there are only so many different variations that we can have. So when you talk about, not having the exact same thing next door or right across the street, I know there's limitations on that as well. But I don't find us to be boring at all. And I think we're doing a good job, and we're doing a good job getting better here, as evidenced by the fact that you're asking for comment tonight, and you'll come back with this comment. I do think I like the idea, although I would challenge anybody to be able to see side by side the change from 50% frontage to 40% on the garage door. I think that's a good thing to aspire to.
It's a good thing, but it'll make a lot of homes that are existing and that are being built, especially in the trail side, in violation.
Well, that's my next question. We had some other previous land use code amendments and some other circumstances have come up, particularly about grandfathering or not. So could you comment? I guess I'm probably going to ask this sort of rhetorically. I know you at the open forum mentioned that there is a fine line being going too far overboard, and developers are not going to build here. So any thoughts, Troy, others that you have on this? I think somebody asked, maybe it was Mr. Gross, have we spoken to developers? What's too far? If you can, what's going too far, regardless of our desire?
Well,
If you would.
first part of your question was started with the 40% versus the 50%. Let me elaborate on that a little bit and try to move into the second part of your question. But
That's fine.
we got to looking at, so a 50-foot lot is a pretty narrow lot, and a lot of them are a lot wider than that, or at least somewhat wider. But if you use 50-foot wide lot as an example, and if there's a 5-foot setback on either side, that means that the house, you could fit a 40-foot wide house on that. And 40% of a 40-foot house is a 16-foot wide garage door, which is a standard 2-car garage door. So any lot that's 50 feet or larger in width can still have a 2-car garage, standard 2-car garage. What this does is on any lot that is less than 50 feet, it really makes you either have to have an alley loaded product or, you know, some sort of a different arrangement where it's a side loaded garage or even a single car garage would, you know, but it really starts to limit smaller lots from having garage doors facing the street. So that, I think, is where that threshold implication is, 40% versus 50%, which just really starts to make those smaller lots not have street-facing garage doors.
Which you wouldn't necessarily want, like that, anything below 50 is a narrow lot. And so if you would allow front-loaded garages on narrow lots, that's a lot of curb cuts, that's a lot of garage. So you typically want to go alley loaded at a certain threshold.
So to Renzo's comment, or are we, if I'm a developer, for instance, Hartford and Draley, are we changing the standards in midstream? Are they subject to, are they unnecessarily, well, I should say unnecessarily, are they then subject to these new standards if their final plat is in, everything's already been approved? Speak to that for a minute, because I think that's what Renzo and I were getting at.
Yeah, so if it's already been through plating and we've approved their diversity plat matrix, they're approved, they're grandfathered in. So this would apply to any new plats coming online.
Okay. Renzo, that, yeah, says, okay, very good. Not sure I had anything else. Commissioners, anything else in this? I like the fact this is discussion purposes only. What is there beyond the things we talked about? You anticipate anything new coming forward with this particular land use code amendment when it comes back to us? Any other areas you're also using this time to look into?
Yeah, if we hear clear direction that we're going overboard, we would be backing off. If we're hearing that sounds pretty good what you've got, then it'll probably be very similar to this, with the exception of maybe adding a little more clarity on how do townhomes and apartment buildings fit into the block diversity part of, you know, what can be next door or directly across the street from. I mean, it's clear that it applies to single family detached, but I think we need to give a little more thought to how does that apply to, you know, the bigger buildings.
Well, to your overarching statement, personally, I think they're on the right track. I don't think we're going overboard necessarily, but that's my opinion. Renzo.
No, I just had a couple other questions.
Go ahead.
if I may. Clear glass. Is that literally what it means, is clear glass, or does it just mean you want glass on that lower level? And if it happens to be tinted for reflection, that's acceptable?
I think it uses the term clear glass now. We hadn't really talked about.
Yeah,
What's
I
that mean?
think clear glass, that was taken from the current code, which relates to retail. So you want to be able to see from the street inside the building. You want that level of transparency. But if we're going to apply this to other building types, perhaps clear glass isn't appropriate in all cases.
Yeah, especially residential. So, and then, shoot, I had my other question for you, now I lost it. Let me look for it, Phil.
Okay.
Go back to it.
Michael, Jeff?
Just one other thing, on the enhanced residential elevations, there's a list, addition window doors, whatever. Is there any way to include something that's not on this list? Are we confining it to a box where maybe it could be outside the box?
Well, we do have this alternative treatments part in the garage standards, and I guess we could potentially make that apply to, the enhanced elevation standards as well, as if somebody comes with something creative that is not anything we thought of, but we say, yeah, that works too, that the planning director might have the authority to say, yeah, we give you an alternative compliance in that. If that's the appetite that you have for that sort of thing, we could probably integrate that in there.
Yeah, that's spot on with what my thought is. Thank you.
Sounds like a good suggestion, Michael. Wendy, anything else?
I think you're on the right track.
Yeah.
You just have
That's
one,
my
I
thought.
I remember what I
I
had.
knew you'd
And he,
remember.
and thanks, Mike, you reminded me what it was. And it's got to deal with the elevations. A lot of the builders provide, especially, and I'll pick Hartford in the area, they have like 20 models that they can build in that area. It seems like that by us saying, and they have those sites that face a park or face an open space. And so now it sounds like, if I'm understanding this right, your proposal is of those 20 models, they might have to have 30 models, because now we're asking them for a variation on the park or whatever to have those added. I'm
I don't think
probably
that-
using the wrong terms.
Yeah.
Other architectural
That's a
styles.
really good question, but I don't think that would make them have to add models. They just have to put more embellishment on those sides that face the park or the side street. Currently they could have that be a pretty blank wall, without, very much articulation. So if we enforced this new rule on them, it would be, they'd have to either add windows or some sort of face treatment, where otherwise it could have been a blank wall, or some sort of brackets along the roof line, or maybe there's six things that this lists as choices. And so of enhanced articulation. So they'd have to choose 3 out of those 6 things, but it wouldn't require that they have a different model. They just have to add some more detailing to those sides. Yeah.
That's excellent. I mean, as soon as
Yeah.
you said they could put windows or added trim, that's an easy thing, as
Yeah.
opposed to a dormer or something like that.
I mean, dormer would also work, but it wouldn't have to be that.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Good. Great job, Michael. Commissioners, anything else on this? Okay, we will not be taking a vote. We look forward to this coming back. On to reports. I've got a couple things. Anybody else before I mention? First of all, I know you eagerly been waiting. We have a vacant seat to fill. Mike Lewis resigned several weeks ago. So see if I make sure this very complicated puzzle, I can explain this. So we did, under our recently changed bylaws, we reached back into the previous pool when Commissioner Bianchi was appointed, and re-interviewed a candidate who interviewed very well back then. And the next Tuesday's council meeting, that individual, we've made a recommendation that that individual would be appointed to what will become a vacant alternate seat. So that will happen, and it's a recommendation to council. At the same time, there's a recommendation that I made and the mayor endorsed that alternate Lowry will be elevated to Mike Lewis's vacant seat. And that because that seat's term was expiring March 31st, along with Commissioner Newland and Commissioner Wood's seats, a further recommendation is that will go before council, that they will be extended for another 4 years. I believe I got that all right. So because that individual that's going to be appointed to to Planning Commission, I won't name that individual, but you'll have to tune in or show up for council meeting next Tuesday to find out. But we are looking forward to it, to having that person join Planning Commission. The only other thing is, let there be light, I guess, appropriate tonight. The only other thing is, I've been asked to mention that in a weak moment, I agreed to 2 things related to pickleball. I am agreed to host, to run the town's new pickleball leagues starting this spring, with an option, if it's successful, to move on to summer and fall leagues. So, and in a further weak moment, on April 12th at the grand opening of Wild Wing Park, including 4 new pickleball courts, I've agreed to host a pickleball event during that grand opening from noon until 2. So for anybody that's here, and for all you thousands of people out there watching, if you're interested in either of these pickleball events, call me. Commissioners, anything else? All right, we're adjourned. Thank you.